Everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, our new side series, Retro Revamp Rewind, where I take a look at 5 of the original 3DO M2 games I showed when I first started my channel over 2 years ago. Today we're taking a look at Heat of 1198, otherwise known as the World Soccer Championship. Before we get too far involved, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. We have a new Patreon as well if you're so inclined, and that link is below. But I would say that Heat of 1198, while a perfectly competent soccer game, is 100% my least favorite of the 5 games that Konami released on the 3DO M2 hardware. And I think that's just down to the fact that I don't really care that much about sports games. Soccer especially, I never played it growing up, it's not a huge thing in the US. So for me, while this game is fun, it's not something that I have to play time and time again. But I will say the big advantage of this game is that you can find it for extremely cheaply if you can find it. And it's a really strange thing with this game is that this is the hardest board to find. It took me the longest time to find an original Heat of 1198, but I found that out of Japan and I paid $49 for it. It cost me double to get it shipped to the US versus what I paid for it. And I have not seen another one for sale since. So while it's very difficult to find it, if you can and it's cheap, it's an awesome game to pick up because it is a fun arcade sports game. And it seems like Konami tried to hit pretty much all the genres on the Konami 3DO M2. You have 2 light gun games, you have a fighting game, you have a shmup, and you have a sports game. The only thing we really didn't get was a driving game, but the PCBs actually have additional areas where it looks like you could have put an analog steering control on there, so I think they must have had plans for it. And I do love all the commentary when they yell goal, although that crowd effect does not look good whatsoever. The waving flags look kind of nice and fluid, but the people sitting in the audience do not look great at all. And the interesting thing is, Konami released so many different soccer games in the 90s. There are soccer games for the PlayStation 1, for the Nintendo 64. Every console basically had a Konami soccer game, including some that were released in 1998. But this is a wholly original game. The only thing that I can see that was reused from one version to the M2 is some of the flag waving effects in the audience. But they made an entirely original M2 arcade game for soccer, and that's probably down to the fact that these games are all planned to be ported to the 3DO M2 console before it was canceled. And you definitely want to launch with a sports game, and soccer being such a huge worldwide phenomenon outside of my lack of interest in it, I could totally see why this game would get made from the ground up and then released in arcades, because you kind of had to have a sports game to start. And I don't know a ton about soccer, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to slide into the goal with the ball. I think they would have called a penalty on that. But the great thing about this game, outside of the fact that it is cheap, is that it runs on the Revision 2 BIOS and it has the real-time clock security subboard, which means that you can convert this to play all the other Konami M2 arcade games. So if you can find a cheap Heat of 11, you can turn it into an Evil Knight, you can turn it into a Battle Trist. If you change the BIOS, you can turn it into a Total Vice or a Tobey Polystars. So it's probably the cheapest board you can buy that'll end up being the most versatile board for you, because Battle Trist and Evil Knight can be converted to play all 5 games as well, but you're going to pay in the $500 to $600 range for those. This game, if you can find it as cheap as I did, is going to cost you less than a brand new release for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox One. Well, even cheaper now because they're $70 games. But your mileage with this game may vary. If you're a huge soccer fan, if you have friends that love playing sports games with you, in 2-player mode, this is a ton of fun. In 1-player mode, it's one of those things where the game is incredibly easy until it becomes exceedingly difficult. Once you get to the tournament rounds, you start losing almost immediately. Even if you turn the difficulty down to easy, I have never actually beaten this game, and I've owned it for over 2 years now, and I've still yet to see the championship at the end. I'm not sure if it's even achievable or if they just had some coding errors and you can't really get to it. It's one of those things. I don't play it enough. Maybe if I kept checking it out and trying to get better at it, I'd be able to beat it. But do I recommend you pick this game up? Well, of course I do, because it is infinitely cheap and it runs on extremely rare hardware that was supposed to be a console to release to home audiences that was canceled at the last minute and only ended up in arcades. So from a rarity and fun standpoint, to the expense, this game is great to pick up. If you really like soccer, it's one of the cheapest soccer arcade games you can find, and if you just want to convert the board to do different things, it's also a great platform to be able to do that. But I mean, graphically, it's probably the weakest of the 5 M2 games. The models don't look great, the audience effects don't look great. I think it was just a quick game, but you do have a lot of different players on screen at once, so of course the polygon count for each model is going to have to be lowered just because they've been pushing a lot of stuff around. And that's the first time anyone scored on me. Cameroon finally got one in, but I ended up winning 6-1. What I'm gonna let you do right after this game ends is I'm gonna let you listen to a little bit of the soundtrack because it's fun for a soccer game, and the sound effects and the announcer I'll do a really good job of articulating what a soccer game would feel like. And I will be back in just about a minute. We'll wrap up our video on Heat of 1198, also known as the World Soccer Championship over in Japan. But enjoy.
Goes in by himself. Shoot! A fine save. He aims. How will it go this time? Go, 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 go! He has enough strength. Good. Counter-attack. How does he handle this? Goes in by himself. Will he shoot? Nice marking. Goal!
First round. Italy versus Scotland.
This card is played by the first round of the tournament. Italy versus Scotland. Well, kick off. Which team will get the lead? Rejected. Yeah, to the left. Goes in by himself. Front of the goal. He's going all the way.
So interestingly enough, I can't find a single example of this game ever being released in America, but where it seems to have ended up is Mexico, because I know a couple of Mexican collectors that have these PCBs in their collection, and they both told me that they found these games in arcades back in the 90s, and it definitely seems to have gotten a lot of distribution in Europe as well, because a couple of European collectors have said the same thing, and that makes sense because in the 90s, soccer really wasn't much of a thing in America. I mean, we have Major League Soccer now, and I don't know much about it, but it's definitely gotten more popular as the years have gone on, but it makes sense why this maybe never came to America. But as far as the game's concerned, if you love soccer, you might really like it. I think it's fine, it's fun to play with friends, but it's definitely not a sport that I enjoy that much, so it's not something that I get a lot of play out of. But as far as an opportunity to convert this into a different game, it's the cheapest PCB you can find, even if it is the hardest, and it's going to give you the most versatility. But I enjoy it. It's not my favorite thing, but to get a full set, you have to have all 5, and that's what I did. Short of that, really appreciate you guys watching. If you do us a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It definitely takes a lot of time and energy to make each one of these episodes, and we have finally gotten to the stage in the game where it has become incredibly hard, and I'm going to lose. And normally what I do is I lose once, try again, lose a second time, and I turn the game off. Because I've never actually seen the ending to this, and I don't think I ever will, because it's not something that I feel compelled to find out how it ends, because I know how it ends. You're going to get a trophy, and you are the champions. Short of that, we will have videos on Sunday and Tuesday as well, but if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys, but that is about it for Heat of 1198 or the World Soccer Championship. It's a perfectly fine game. If you like soccer, you might like it more, but I've lost, and I'm turning it off. Bye-bye.